Great. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. It looks like we've gotten everything back up and running. And apologies again to the great presenters earlier, to Emily and Robert. We'll make sure to re-record your sessions if we weren't able to preserve it, and we'll add it back into the streams afterwards. But with no further delay, we'll hop over to Katie and we'll make up our lost time during the break in the afternoon. So Katie, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Shannon. All right. I'm sharing my screen here. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie McCain. I'm the Director of Sustainability at the City of Charleston. I manage the city's composting program, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today. So this is the website for the composting program. This is, if you haven't heard of it, it's a residential composting program for any residents in the entire Charleston region, and there are 20 food scrap drop-off sites all over the region, and you can take your food scraps to any of these drop sites whenever you want for free. So that's the program. You would just click on this link to sign up. So now if I scroll down, you can see these are the 20 drop sites. Hi, Mom. I'm live on Zoom. Um, uh, and you can click in and see these sites, where they are, hours of operation, things like that. So if I keep scrolling, I get to a data dashboard. So if I click this data dashboard, this is where we'll spend most of our time. You can come in and see program data. So we track this data for a couple of reasons. One, to be super transparent with our community members, so y'all can see the progress we're making, where we're not making progress, maybe where we need to improve. But we also track it for a really important reason, and I think it's probably been said on this webinar numerous times, that you cannot manage what you don't measure. So we have all this data and we actually go back and analyze it regularly. We collect data monthly on how much tons of food scraps are diverted from the landfill and sent to composting instead. And then we report on this. So you can see in this dashboard, you can filter this by year. So we started our pilot year in 2022. You can see all these numbers changed. So our goal in 2022 was 50 tons. So we exceeded that goal. You can see the estimated emissions that are offset by composting and how many full garbage truck trips are completely avoided through that. So you can do it by year, so we can compare drop sites year to year to make sure they're improving. And if they're not, what do we need to do to change that? You can also go into each individual drop site. So for example, Ackerman Park is one of our largest. I can click on that Ackerman Park icon and it adjusts all of these graphs so you can see Ackerman Park's averaging about 3 tons a month. That's a lot. That's significant. So if I click off that, let's say I wanted to let's look at Folly Beach. So Folly Beach is doing about a ton a month. That's impressive for a tiny beach community. And let's see, here's a good example. So Randolph Park is one of our newer sites. Randolph Park, we haven't done a ton of community outreach. And by looking at this data and by looking at our sign up data, which I'll show you in a minute, you can see that's a place under some analysis here that we really need to do some more outreach in that area. So that's how this data helps us to improve the program. You can also click on this graph by service area. So there's 20 drop sites. The city of Charleston manages 10 of them. And then we invited other partners to join to manage their own drop sites. So Mount Pleasant has 3, you can see all these other partners here. And it's just important to note, all the partners have different populations. So obviously having 10 in the city of Charleston is important versus, having one on Folly Beach. So then really quick, we have a goal for every year. So far we've met our goal every year. So you can see this is the 2024 data here in blue. So in May, we did about 20 tons. We should have the June data in just a couple days. And then we put it in here right away. And this bar will automatically update. So you can see we are on the way to meeting our goal for 2024 in this program. We're just about halfway there now, and we've got a whole extra month to add. Plus, we have pumpkins to add. So we are trying to ramp up pumpkin composting too. So I wanted to just quickly note, so this chart on the bottom left, it shows households participating by drop site. So this is fed by our Google form where you actually sign up. So that means this data is a little bit skewed because it takes into account what drop sites were open when people signed up. So for example, we started with Ackerman, Corinne, and Medway Park as our 3 pilot sites, and you can see they have the most signups. But now maybe someone who signed up for Ackerman is composting at Randolph Park and they haven't gone in to change their site, which you can do. I realize it's an extra step, but everyone who signed up can actually received an email from Google with the information about your compost sign up, and you can actually go in and change your drop site if you'd like to do that, and that would help make this data a little more accurate. So this can be a little misleading. We have a sign up map that is ArcGIS has some difficulties integrating with Power BI. So if you click this map, you can actually see the signups throughout the whole region. So if I zoom in a little bit, all these blue dots are individual signups, and we have over 2,500 signups. And then of course the black flags are the drop sites. So we can look at this data and say, wow, there's a pretty significant population here in Park Circle area that really wants to compost and continue to reach out to the city of North Charleston to see if they're interested in joining our program. We can see, just like that Randolph Park example, not a lot of composting happening there. There's not a lot of people signed up here. So this to me, looking at those two, says we need to do some more outreach in that area. We see the same thing up here in Singleton Park. So looking at this data really helps us manage it. It helps us improve the program, and it helps just to be really transparent and clear to our citizens about what's happening. We'll also use this data to make budget requests. So we'll say, there's a hole over here that we really need, so let's add another drop site, and we have the site all identified, and we can put that in the budget for city council to consider. So it's a true using data to really enhance and improve programs methodology. I did wanted to show you, we also have social media. So we always post our data that every month on this program on social media, and typically we'll link it to our dashboard too. So if you follow us on the socials, you can follow that too. Otherwise, it's all available on our website. So let me just double check my notes. Yeah, I think that's all. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. Or I know we're running late, so maybe we'll just move on to the next person.
That's okay. We do have a question in the chat. Someone is asking, any goals or expectations to expand out to work with neighboring counties?
Yeah, we are. So this started as a city program. We received a grant for it to pilot it, and it was so successful that we said, we have all the materials to create this program on our own. How about you all join our program? So we reached out to, Charleston County, Folly Beach. They were the first 2 that joined, and then we had other regional partners. So if you're talking about counties beyond Charleston County, we have reached out to them also. And at some point, the program is very scalable. So at some point we say, we do need to put a limitation on geographic boundaries. However, you can take everything we have and replicate it where you are, and we'll give you that starting point. So we have expressed that to numerous people across the state, across the country, that have been interested in learning how they can replicate our program. So for example, because Kiowa is behind gates, they couldn't join our program because it's all publicly accessible, but they created their own program based off of ours, and we gave them all our materials to help get them started. So if anyone's interested in joining, just call me.
Awesome. Thank you
We'd
so
love
much.
to have you.
Great. And now up next, we have Eric Pullman and Sandy Gagne on the West Ashley restaurant. Thank you, Katie. Have a good day.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, everyone.
All right, go ahead and let me figure out how to do a screen share, and we can get started on this. Okay, yeah, so I'm Eric Pullman. I'm the West Ashley coordinator with City of Charleston in the Planning and Zoning Department. I oversee the progress that Plan West Ashley redevelopment and revitalization is going in the West Ashley area. And as part of that, yeah, it's part of my job is to make sure that people are aware of the vibrant community that we have over in West Ashley. So we have a population roughly around 83,000 people just in West Ashley alone, about 40% of the city, 45% or so. And with that, one of the frequent questions that we receive is, why is there nowhere to eat over here? So that was part of what I wanted to look into over the course of last summer, was how many restaurants are there in West Ashley and what is the makeup of them. So uh, with a summer intern and myself, we compiled a list of all the different restaurants that you can find in the West Ashley area, mainly so we can support our local small businesses. We can create a database so we can do statistics. And of course, just spreading the knowledge that there are many, many options for people to go eat at. And in addition to that, there's actually a lot of options outside of the Avondale area as well. So what we did was go through and collect all the data. We used the Charleston Water Service and their grease trap information for the first round of data collection, and then we kind of ground source truth to that by Google Maps, and then also occasionally going out to find places. And what we found out through all this was that we have around 247 operational restaurants in the area, and that includes everything from Parker's Kitchen and Gas, which has a grab and go fried chicken and other items in it. So we counts those, but also goes up to things like Bearcat Cafe, which just came into Avondale, Sweatman's Garden, and all those other restaurants. So something that was very exciting to me was also that 157 of the 247 were locally owned and operated, which means we have an incredibly robust local system that is taking place in West Ashley. And it's just showing a lot of the pride also, because a lot of the operators live in the area, and what drew them to West Ashley was the ability to sell to local customers, as opposed to trying to open on the peninsula and market their items to the tourism or college market. They wanted to be in with the community, integrated with their neighbors, and really supporting everyone around them. After we compiled the database, we got in touch with Sandy to help us showcase it a little bit better and make it to where people can actually digest it and use it to their advantage.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric. My name is Sandy Gagne. I'm the city's GIS developer, and I worked with Eric to create the public map that showcases the West Ashley restaurant scene. So I'm going to give you a demo of that map, and then since today is about data, I'm also going to give you a quick look at the actual data and also at the separate editing map that we created so that Eric and his staff, whoever's working with him, can also maintain it in a very simple and straightforward way. So let me share here. All right. Is it sharing?
Not yet.
Not yet. No, what is happening here?
So you gotta pick.
There we
Yeah,
go.
sharing. Yeah.
Are we good now? Can we
Yep.
see the city's main homepage?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry about that. Okay, so first I'm going to show you how to get to this map. So on the City of Charleston's homepage, if you go to our online services, we have this GIS and interactive maps location. And the West Ashley map is here since it's newer. We've been adding things, so it's down here. This is one of our newest maps. So I'm just going to open that up. And here it is. I'm going to zoom out so you could see all of West Ashley. And these are all of the locations that Eric and our previous intern mapped. And at first glance, you say, well, it's kind of like a Google map. You know, here are the restaurants. I could see where they are. I can click on them and get information. So the reason that we made this, instead of just Googling a restaurant is because that's really primarily made for you to get directions and to just find out where something is, but you can't really showcase a certain area, like a certain neighborhood like West Ashley. It's hard to do. And that didn't really give us a way to track the data or to ask specific questions like how many locally owned restaurants are there in this neighborhood. And we wanted to be able to track that, like Eric said. So let's see, I can give you a quick example of that. Oops. I have to move my little Zoom thing out of my way here so I can click on all the filters. There we go. Okay, so just for example, I want to say that I want to look for all the local restaurants. Right, you can see there's a lot of them, like we were just talking about. And I want to find all the local pizza restaurants. Come in here, and these are all the different categories that we created. Here you can come in and find all these different restaurants, and then you can get more information. And if they do have a website, that is also linked in here. So I think most of them do. But so that is available there if you want to go directly to that restaurant's website. You also, with a little search tool up here, you could pick a specific address. I'm just going to pick one I happened to be looking at the other day for something. See. And then you could see everything that's around you. I'm going to turn off go back to all the restaurants. So you could come in and just get a better idea of what's at a certain location. And got a little legend on the left. See if something new is coming up. I actually didn't see this one. So new restaurants coming on board. So yeah, so it's just really a way to just showcase everything that's out here in the restaurant scene in West Ashley. And I'm going to show you real quickly then how we track this data. Come in here, a little bit of behind the scenes of where we build all of these tools and maps. And so this map is not a public map. This is just accessible by staff. And we can come in here. So it's not quite as pretty, doesn't have a little tools. It's just more of a working interface, but it gives us the ability to come in here and to just pick different categories. You say there's a new restaurant, you could add new points, or just come in here and edit the actual data table. And it's pretty straightforward. You can come in here and click drop downs or type in information. Actually, I'm going to go back here 1 second. This. Sorry about that. So many maps. Had them a little bit confused. So here's actually the final editing map, which looks a little bit nicer. And here you can drop the points like I was showing you and click on them and add that information. And what I also added is an ability to open up that table for the entire data set. So when Eric did his calculations to get the percentage of local restaurants, he could come and do that again at any time and come in here to this table and export this out just as a CSV, open it up in Excel, put it into reports, just check statistics, run some basic numbers, and get that information out of this category where we're tracking what type it is. And you could also do that by different types of restaurant, whether it's food truck, bakery, bar, restaurant. We can pull some statistics and numbers on that too, and track it over time. So let's see. So yeah, so that is basically that map in a nutshell. One thing I just checked the other day is that this map, since we put it out to the public a couple months back, it's had over 6,200 views, which if you're thinking like Instagram celebrity, maybe that's not a big deal, but in the world of local government apps, that's pretty great. We're pretty much viral. So pretty excited to see that it's getting out there and that people are using it and people are sharing it and that hopefully people are finding wonderful new restaurants to eat at because there are a lot of great places out there. So really happy this will be helping people find them. And that's all I have. If Eric had anything to add to that, or if
I'll
anyone has
just
any questions.
I'll just add that it's Friday, so take full advantage of
Yes.
this app and find somewhere new to go explore in West Ashley.
Yes, agreed.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. And with that, we will kick it over to the fire department.
So you're still
I just realized I was sorry about
That's okay. No worries. I was just waiting for you to bring that up. I could still kick us off here if you want me to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am sharing my screen right now. Are you guys seeing anything?
Yes, I could see
Okay.
the intro to the report.
Yeah, awesome. You go ahead and take it away then, Sandy.
Sure. Okay. So, as I said in just the last presentation, I'm Sandy Gagne, the GIS developer for the city. And I've worked with the fire department staff since 2021 to use story maps to share their annual reports of accreditation data with the public. So two questions you may have about that are what is accreditation and what is a story map? So first of all, accreditation is a comprehensive self-assessment and evaluation process that the fire department does um, that enables them to analyze their emergency services, to examine their performance levels, compare them to industry best practices, and get an overall picture of the services they provide. Charleston Fire Department is accredited by the Commission on Fire Accreditation International, and that's through the Center for Public Safety Excellence. And annually, they require the fire departments to submit a summary of what they have done over the year, but it's not required to share it to the public. Charleston Fire Department decided that they wanted to do that and sort of, as overall open data and transparency policy. And they decided to do that a few years ago. We chose to use a story map to do that. So a story map, what that is a publicly shareable, it's an interactive presentation tool. So it's like PowerPoint, except it's more data focused and it's interactive. So it gives people an ability to see photographs, to open maps, to browse around maps and to access data, to download documents and files. And we felt this was the best way to share with the public the annual report for the accreditation. So the best way to really see that or to understand that is to see it in action. So I set up the framework on the back end. Jill and Carl are going to talk about all the work that they did and the actual data because they're the experts. They know this data. And they did most of the work to actually create this interface and to make it look wonderful for the public. So I will turn it over to them and let them talk about that.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carl Morris. I'm the Assistant Chief of Planning for the Fire Department. So we're going to talk about our annual report here. And as Sandy said, she was highly involved with helping getting this set up. And we kind of entered all the data into it.
Hey everyone, I am Jillian Robson. I am the Data Analytics and Integration Manager for the Charleston Fire Department. Like they said, we implemented this a few years ago. It was actually in 2020 when the Charleston Fire Department came together with the GIS department to go ahead and make this available to everyone. Before this, we did go ahead and print out like hard copies and handbooks that we would be able to hand out to people, but we saw that this wasn't really reaching a wider scope of people. So to do that, once again, we created a story map as we thought this was the best way to see fit. We can go ahead and start diving into it.
And as we go through, what you'll see is kind of a summary of our department for the past year. It's going to include like positions as well as the data to go along with the services that we provide. And here you'll see our mission, vision, and values. This is a big piece of our strategic plan, which is a 5-year base plan that basically flows in with accreditation. So here you can see our mission: excellent people providing exceptional service. As our vision is to create a safer Charleston. So everything that we do or that we add, we do to create a safer Charleston. And as you can see here, it's going to fall in line with the city's mission and values as well. So they all pretty much line up for what we want to do. Chief Curia always likes to put in a letter, just a summary of the previous year, what we've done, how we've done it, and the pieces, important pieces that are added. When you look here, you'll see the significant accomplishments. A long list, just picking out a couple of things there. We added a different size tack line hose. We've updated our auto aid from 6 to 7 partners. And what you'll see when we talk about auto aid is we have a group of 7 local departments that all work together. And as we go through this data, you'll see kind of the city of Charleston's area, and you'll see Mount Pleasant, you'll see St. Andrews, James Island. So with the auto aid program, we wind up sending the closest unit, no matter what district it may be in, because some of our districts overlap. It becomes very advantageous for the public to get that service in a timely manner.
So I'll kick it off with the demand for service section, which provides a comprehensive overview of the calls we responded to both in our jurisdiction and in the neighboring areas. It also breaks down the incidents by category, shows the distribution of calls by the day of the week and hour of the day. So for the total number of calls, we see that we were called to 22,778 incidents last year in our jurisdiction, which is about 500 more incidents than in 2022. Outside of our jurisdiction, we were called to 2,034 incidents, and one of our aid partners responded to a call in our city for 1,241 of those. When we break the incidents down by the category, we see that the medical calls account for almost 50% of all of our incidents, which shows how critical our role is in providing emergency medical services, whereas fires only account for about 2.6%. So moving on to the distribution of the incidents by the day of the week, we observed that the highest number of calls occurred on Fridays, and this was not only for 2023, but also for 2022. And this remains true for Sunday being the day with the lowest call volume. So that's going to be 23 and 2022. So when we look at the incidents by the hour of day, we see the peak time is between noon to 1 p.m. and that the hours around this are also near the highest. So what this shows is that the most incidents are occurring in the middle of the day when more people are active rather than in the early morning or late night hours. So for response times, there are 4 different things that we measure, which is going to be the alarm handling. And that is the time that is elapsed between when the dispatcher receives the notification of the call and when the dispatcher assigns a fire department unit to that incident. Turnout time is the time that elapsed between when the fire department unit was assigned to the call and when that unit marks themselves en route to the incident. Travel time is the time elapsed between a unit that marked themselves en route to when they arrive on scene. And finally, that total time is the time elapsed between when the dispatcher receives the call and when that unit arrives on scene. So we look at the 90th percentile for response times to indicate how long it takes our units to arrive on time to 90% of our emergency incidents within our jurisdiction. And we break this down from different categories such as low, moderate, and high risk fires, as well as EMS. So our bench times were based on the past 5 years of data in our last standards of cover. And our benchmark time was 7 minutes and 30 seconds. And for 2023, we are happy to say that for 90% of our calls, we were able to meet that time for all of our fire risks. So we got the low, moderate, and high, but unfortunately, we were not able to meet that for our EMS or medical calls.
So we dig into kind of the operations side of things. It's divided into fire operations, special operations, and training. And we are a 24/48 shift schedule, 17 stations, 25 apparatus, 4 battalions. So we have a couple of new stations on the horizon, and we've just added a ladder earlier this year on Johns Island.
Sorry, that is showing our marine calls. Give it 1 second to maybe populate. There we go. So the map displays the location of all the instances where there was a fire. The red points in the gray area represent our jurisdiction, and anything outside of that gray area is where we responded to giving aid to another department. So in total, we responded to 597 fires, 189 of them being classified as structure fires. And it is estimated from our services, we saved approximately $165 million worth of property, and we recorded $8.77 million worth of damage from all the fires for the past year. There were 4 firefighter related injuries, but there were 12 civilian fire related injuries last year, but we are happy to report that there were no civilian or firefighter related deaths. So for our medical calls, we are a licensed basic life support agency, with all of our firefighters being trained to ensure that they're equipped for calls such as cardiac arrest, strokes, allergic reactions, and many other medical emergencies. And as you can see, they're kind of all over the city, as this really is our highest call volume.
And if you take a look there at the map, you can see how some of those calls are outside, like in North Charleston or Mount Pleasant. What I was referring to earlier with the auto aid agreement, if they have units not available and ours are closer, we'll send those units to those areas and vice versa. Special operations, we have several different teams involved with special operations: hazmat, tech rescue, marine, wildland, and the TIMS team. We also have the honor guard that performs funeral services and different aspects.
So the hazmat team contains 39 personnel on each shift who are trained and ready to respond to incidents involving hazardous materials. So these are going to be calls such as chemical spills or gas leaks. And our team responded to 128 incidents last year, with 35 of those being outside of our jurisdiction. Our marine team is comprised of 35 members who are trained to be deckhands or U.S. Coast Guard licensed captains. And these respond to emergencies along any waterways, and they were assigned to 68 incidents last year. Our technical rescue team provides emergency response to really technical incidents, including high angle rescues, trench rescues, and structural collapses and more. And this team is comprised of 45 members who were assigned to 310 incidents for 2023.
The wildland team consists of 16 members who are Red Card certified. We work with wildland extinguishment and containment. So just another special team that we have. The TIMS team we talked about earlier, they work with federal and local law enforcement, provide tactical services, specialty care for tactical services in those events. And our honor guard represents funerals, ceremonies, special events. The training division is the main training support for the city of Charleston. Fortunately, we're able to provide just about all the training in-house. We do have some specialty training that has to go outside. We have an assistant chief of training and 6 members assigned full-time there. They work with incumbent training, driver training, medical training, and then they work in depth with our recruit class, which we have a recruit class getting ready to start this month or next month with about 46 candidates. Fire Marshal Division, they have to actually consist of 20 members, 3 deputy fire marshals, 12 assistant fire marshals, a recruitment manager, recruitment and outreach coordinator, and 2 administrative assistants. And they will cover a big piece of topics. So the community risk reduction in our department, pre-incident planning, hydrant inspections, code enforcement, public outreach are all fall under that category. And if you look You can see the inspections piece that was added. So we have some data on that. The business license certificate of occupancy is 603. The total number of inspections completed were 4,587. And total number of re-inspections was 1,271. And the number of plans that they received were 3,251. So they definitely stay busy and constantly adding to those. Community education, as you can see, there's a lot of different pieces that are involved. Apparatus tours are done at the stations or they go out to the public. Our community outreach, canvases that we work with other parts of the city to go out and canvass areas for smoke alarms, safety presentations, station tours. You can see the numbers and how many people are affected or outreached in those. Fire investigations, have 6 certified investigators within the Fire Marshal Division. They will investigate fires in the city of Charleston. Last year they had 29 or 79 fires investigated, and 16 were determined to have been set intentionally. And as you can see here, there's some of the different causes that they have found in the investigations for last year. Planning and professional services encompasses the day-to-day task, administrative, and technical services. A couple of different groups here. Our health and safety officer, which handles physicals for our employees, safety and wellness, and fitness are also involved in that. Administration, which handles our budget. We have finance, HR, IT, and GIS involved in that. Planning, which I'm over. We handle strategic planning, standards of cover, accreditation, ISO, annual report, and updating policies and procedures. Technical services basically works with facilities, property, and supply distribution. So they handle anything that our stations need to be repaired, that supplies that they need. So when we're looking at, how much do we need of something, how much do we use something, that's involved in that process as well. Logistics falls under there as well. So making repairs, having a trade specialist. We also have a PPE and SCBA team. We're fortunate to have this. Instead of having to send our gear out to a vendor, we're able to handle everything in-house. So we do inspection and cleaning in-house, as well as inspection and repairs of our SCBAs, which has been found, cost efficient for us versus sending it out to vendors to get those fixed. So when you look at the bottom here, you'll see we have a tab for the promotions list for the past year. So we recognize everyone that's been promoted to another position throughout the year, constantly growing. So I think it's neat for everybody to see that and to be recognized in this as well.
Yeah, we know that was long, but once again, the whole point of this annual report is so someone can pick up and not know anything about the fire department and get all the information that they really need. So that is it for the Charleston Fire Department.
And this is just a small piece of, Sandy was talking the accreditation process, and we get way more in depth in the process. Each year we send data, and then at 5 years they come and evaluate the data that we have. And basically we look at it as, hey, what are we doing? How well are we doing it? And what can we do to make it better? So that's the advantage of that process. And this is just a small part of that we can share.
Great, thank you both so much. Are there any questions at the moment? All right, well, thank you, Chief Morris and Jill, and I will kick it over to Shannon Morton with CPD.
Hi, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Let me get to share my screen real quick. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. So my name is Shannon Morton. I'm the Senior Crime Analyst here at the PD, filling in for our Police Services Manager, David Crosby. I'm here to give you a walkthrough of our police data initiative. So the National Policing Institute program geared towards challenging departments to share data with the public and also allow the public to request that their department share data if they aren't already is formed under the Police Data Initiative. There's always been a desire to share data, but the barrier to entry was greater in the past, and new technologies have made the processes easier and more friendly. So this is the City of Charleston's PDI site. You can either reach it through going to the City of Charleston website, the Police Data Initiative website itself, or going directly to charleston-sc.gov/PDI. Also, just always available for you. You can always just Google Charleston City PDI, and it'll usually be the first link that pops up. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right, so our current layout, it began in 2017, and the information is not automatic except for the incident map, so it gets updated pretty regularly. The report is uploaded every Monday for our CompStat reports. When you click on the links here at the bottom, you'll see we have the professional standards dashboard, the OpStat reports, the incident map, and the police response data sets. Up until 2017, this format was kind of all just updated one by one. And provided kind of in a difficult way to find other resources and files. We received a lot of feedback on it not being user-friendly, so the static reports are the only thing that we use for that format anymore. If you click on the weekly report then you'll have the previous year, it'll open a PDF in your browser, and you can download a copy by clicking the down arrow in the top right of the screen once the report is open. So you can see that here. We've got some of the filters and everything. And you can see how the OpStat report looks. I know these are from 2022, but you can see it'll have the end of year stat reports. They'll have all of the breakdowns of everything, and then the weekly ones as well. So we have our citywide numbers uploaded weekly, derived from CompStat with a crime activity map. You'll see kind of the dark red is the regions that had increases or significant increases, and the lighter the color or 0 means no crimes happened during that time frame. And we've actually changed our percent change. It used to just show, month to month or year to year, or quarter to quarter, and now we've kind of got a rolling 5-year average. It just gives our commanders a snapshot of what is currently going on and how it looks comparatively to weeks, months, quarters, and years past. And so if you see a spike or something that's trending in the wrong direction, you can kind of make a change as it's going on. And we also have a crime activity map that helps visualize those areas for the teams or for the specific beats that are involved for the patrol units to know, okay, this is happening in my specific region. And this is a good chance to point out that there are footnotes on the bottom of these. So the map and the incident graphs do not include drug or weapons violations, because those are more of like a proactive stop would determine that we had, gotten drugs off of the street, and that our source is coming out of our records management system database that's based on the date that the report occurred, not just that it was reported, and the unfounded cases and locked narcotics cases are closed out and excluded from this report. And this is just kind of a closer look at the first page of the report that covers citywide. And then the following pages of the report include a team analysis of the same information kind of broken down with each offense and the address, so that our investigative teams can provide updates to command staff on what's going on with each case, whether there's been an arrest or a clearance in that case. The final page of the report was only added 2 years ago. Overdoses and suicides have been an emerging issue, and various steps have been put in place to attempt to quantitatively capture a baseline for us to monitor. So we have a list of our top call types at the very top to kind of assess where our resources are being directed the most based on calls to dispatch, and then graphs at the bottom. So the next resource I'd like to talk about is the police response data sets. That's the icon that looks like a person on the far right side of the PDI page. This takes you to a landing page that provides a general overview of what you're going to be looking at on the other tabs. We're only going to go into one tab since all the tabs kind of work the exact same way. So these are the arrests And you can see on the top, you have the rest, the field contact cards, electronic citations, as we are traffic citations mainly, our calls for service and officer initiated calls, and then our hate bias reporting. In this example, let me go ahead and click. So yeah, so for downloading raw data files, you can do that here. You can either download it as a spreadsheet, as a shapefile for use in ArcGIS, or as a KMZ if you want to look at something in Google Earth. And the dots are clickable for data as well. So in this screenshot, you'll see we have the arrest stuff. And if you scroll around, you can click and zoom in and get the information that would be inside of an Excel spreadsheet or inside of a shapefile for GIS. And each dot can actually reference one or more multiple entries. So if you're clicking on it, there might be another dot that's inside of that record in the exact same position. So if they have a number at the top, you can click over to the next one and you can see all of the things that happen at the same location. The professional standards dashboard, which looks like a group of 3 people standing on the left, if you click on that icon, that gives you an opportunity to look at the professional standards dashboard. And it brings you to the landing page that has a description and footnote, as well as some contact info for the Office of Internal Affairs. This resource is manually updated quarterly, but was used as a proof of concept with Power BI since the city has licensing for that resource. Pretty sure we've seen some people use that today. So Power BI is super user-friendly. You can kind of zoom around and click around on it. And if you want to see what investigations and officer complaints or compliments have occurred, or how many allegations were sustained out of however many officers for a time frame, you can use all of these different sliders and selectors to kind of narrow down your focus to see what's going on. And the page also shows a number of compliments per officer and things like that. So each of the data points has its own sliding bar, really user-friendly. If you click continue, you land on another page that breaks down our allegations by type and displays the number of officers and how many of the allegations were sustained. Because of the way this data has to be prepared and grouped, we're not able to provide a time filter for this particular data set, but it defaults to all allegations since we started providing the resource. The numbers on the previous slide will still match if you increase the date range to, I believe, April 5th, 2022. That was the day it was first pulled. So everything on the page is clickable and adjusts to all the other items to show you the breakdowns. And the last resource we're going to look at is the one that's underneath the icon that looks like a badge, the incident map. I'll do a live demo of this resource, but to let you know, it's automated and refreshed weekly on Wednesdays, and it's another proof of concept using more Esri products, which we've seen a lot today. I know you've shown the restaurant maps and everything like that, so it's going to be very user-friendly. If you're used to using one of those maps, it's very useful, and it's a goal to just make the data more approachable and easy to filter. So moving, hopefully you can see my Google screen here. So here we're just focused on where the police department is, but you can see I can put in a different address up here at the top. I can change the type of crimes that I want to look at to show specific types of crimes happening in the area. The default is just that it will show me all crimes. And I believe the default for date of crime is from 2022 to yesterday. But that usually can be a little overwhelming. So I just showed us just what's going on for the past year. But as I move around the map, just like I could on Google Maps, I can also click here and see this was, a theft from motor vehicle and get a little bit of information about this case. So I can get the incident number if I need to reach out and get some information on the case. I can see the address and the beat and team that it happened in, and also whether or not the case is still active or whether it's been cleared in some way, specifically usually by an arrest. So this is a great resource for people who are looking to see what's happening in their specific neighborhood, or if they want to drill down the hour of the crime occurring, they can do that. So, if someone is walking from, especially our students that are living downtown, if they're walking home, they can see what happens during the hours of the day during the location where they're going to be walking. And of course, if people are moving to Charleston or they're looking to move throughout our community, they can put in their address and kind of get a better glimpse of where they might be, what they might be seeing for their community, because it's all relative. So if there are any questions, I'd love to take them. Let me know.
Great, thank you, Shannon. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone has one they would like to shout out, please feel free.
Great, well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And we will take a brief 15-minute, or sorry, excuse me, 10-minute break, and we will be back on schedule at 3 p.m. And thank you all for your flexibility. And we will see you then. Hey everyone, welcome back. It is 3 o'clock and I will pass it back over to Sandy, who has been very prolific today, who will present our voting district map. Thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome. Thank you, Shannon. Let me get my screen shared here, and we'll get started. Okay. Okay. So the map that I'm going to show you now is an interactive public map for citizens to find their Charleston City Council districts, as well as other county, state, and federal level voting districts. The motivation originally for building this map was our recent redistricting process, and that we used the 2020 census data to redraw the city council district boundaries for the first time since the 2010 census. This was a really long process that took place in 2022. Took most of the year, public meetings, lots of input internally from public, citizens, groups. It was a lot of work. And finally, at the end of 2022, November 2022, new city council district boundaries were adopted. So in 2023, we knew we had the upcoming council member and mayoral election. So we really wanted to make sure that people had their correct council districts, especially since they've been using the same ones for many years if they lived here for that long. And while we were doing that, I said, why, as long as we're sharing that, we might as well add in other district boundaries, other voting information too. So what I'm going to do is give you a demo of the map that we have on our main city maps page, and I'll talk a little bit about all of the data layers that were brought together from different sources to create the map. So to get to the map, I am on our City of Charleston GIS main maps page, and down here, scroll down at the voting districts map, open this up. Has a little pop-up screen, tells you how to use this to identify voting districts. You can enter your address or click on the map. Some basic info. Just gonna tell it okay. Bring the whole city in here. So really the map just has two primary functions. And one is just to search for an address. And I'm going to use our address here at the GIS office. Downtown. Oops, if I could type, that would help. Charleston. So it pops that location up and automatically brings up the district information. So you can see we're City Council District 8. Council member in this part of the city is Michael Seekings. And then we also have Charleston County District councilors, the statewide voting precinct name and number, as well as state and US House District information to get those numbers. So it's a pretty straightforward map. You can also click on a location. If you don't have an address, you just say, okay, here in Council District 6, what other information is at this location? Zoom in. I click there. It's going to give me all the information at that clicked point. So same concept. Nothing too complicated, but very useful and very important that people have that correct information. We also have at the top of the map a link to the South Carolina Votes website, which, of course, I would assume that most people have been to that page. It has all of voting information for citizens to get their personal voting information and sample ballots, a lot of other voting related information. So we thought that would be an important one to have here for people to access. So I'm just going to talk real briefly here about the different data layers. So on the top right of the map, I'm going to zoom out so you can see everything here first. There we go. So next to our main district info button, I also have the map layers. So if I do want to see those other boundaries, I can actually put those on the map too. So if I turn off the districts, just so you can see individually, here's one. It's the House districts, it's very large, state districts. Those. The city council districts, I'll start at a city level. This is the one that I was talking about where during the redistricting process, we changed these boundaries. And this was done on a parcel by parcel basis across the entire city and the entire city limits using 2020 census data. So that's a very detailed boundaries to make sure everything is very accurate. And whenever a new parcel or new property is annexed into the city, GIS staff will go in there and we will update this boundary as well as the city limits and all the underlying data too. So that, if somebody came in here and annexed, like these two parcels became annexed into the city, we would make that a part of District 11. And that one, the most recent one that happened was a couple weeks ago. So this data layer is always being updated. It's also available on the Open Data Portal. So you could download this layer from that website. We also have county districts, county council districts, which I just pulled that recently and updated it last month directly from Charleston County. You'll notice maybe that we don't have Berkeley County in here, and that is coming soon. I have not added that yet, but I will be trying to get that into this map too. The statewide voting precincts and the other state data and US House districts, that I just made sure to check on in May this year, and I get that data from South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, and take that data and I could access that from them, pull that into our maps and use that to make sure we have the most up-to-date data. And just for fun, I'm going to show you what happens when all these are on. And there's a reason I'm showing you this. But if I turn on all these layers, you can see it's kind of just a crazy mess. So from a data processing perspective, it's a little bit tricky to try to get something to tell you here, like at this location, what are all these different data sets, and give me information and pull it from like 10 different data sets at once. So behind the scenes, I actually took all of this data and sort of smashed it together into one giant cookie cutter layer where you have like thousands of little polygons, but each of those are unique to all of the different voting districts that are stacked at that location. And so when someone comes in here and types in their address, it's just pulling it from that one source that's mashed everything together. So it's that helped create this map. And like I said, come back here. Oops. And that is actually pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward and it is out there so people can get that important information about their city council district and other districts for upcoming elections. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Great job, Sandy. I don't see any questions in the
Okay.
chat. But any questions on the participants at the moment or attendees?
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have about 5 minutes until the next city plan presentation. So feel free to hang tight. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat regarding any of the panels today. I will also be putting at this point a link to the survey, which I would love to have people take at the end of the event, just letting us know what we can do better next time in different ways to improve the program. So please wait to take it after you see our final presentation. But I will drop the link in now just so people can take a look. Chloe and Casey, whenever you're ready to start, feel free.
All right, you ready, Casey? All right. So we'll just start with introducing ourselves. So I'm Chloe Stuber. I'm a senior planner with the City of Charleston.
And I'm Casey Conrad. I'm a GIS analyst with the City of Charleston.
We are the co-creators of the story map titled the 1931 Charleston City Plan that we'll be presenting today. One of the reasons why we wanted to share this on Open Data Day is because this effort really is about making available, making open data that previously was hidden or at least very hard to find. So it's bringing to light information that we hope can help us, our community, our city, better understand our history and in turn our present. I do want to also acknowledge this was a multi-year effort and there were a lot of people that helped to make it possible. So I just want to start with just acknowledging some of those individuals. So like I said, Casey and I were the co-creators of this. We also had significant contributions from Jim Hemphill, who was formerly a planner with the City of Charleston. After we finished the story map, we invited a team of external reviewers to help us look through, make sure that we are presenting the information accurately and with integrity. So those individuals, Dr. Millicent Brown, Dr. Christina Butler, Vince Graham, Meg Moen, and Emma Paz. Also, Meg Moen, our public records manager with the City of Charleston, she would be here today, but she's on vacation. She played a really critical role in making this possible. So I'll say a little bit more about that role that she played later in the presentation. Adrian Caper-Swinton, our Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Manager, provided guidance during the early stages of the project. The College of Charleston Special Collections and Low Country Digital Library Society Associate Director Leah Worthington produced high-resolution scans of the maps, making the GIS analysis possible, and also provided a public repository for the historical documents that we'll be showcasing today. And then finally, the Charleston Library Society for supporting these research efforts and for contributing the scans of the report by the Morrison Knowles Incorporated to the Low Country Digital Library collection. So thank you to everyone who made this possible, and thank you for those who are still with us today to learn more about it. Before we dive in, I do just want to note as well that there's a lot of research that went into this. And so for those who are curious to see what sources we use, we do have a comprehensive list of all the sources cited in this resource. And so Casey can put a link in the chat to that.
And before we begin, forgive me, but I'm having issues with the chat. When I open it, I can send to hosts and panelists, but not everyone.
Yeah.
Casey, let me promote you to host and see if that helps remedy it.
Okay, thank you.
Can you do the same for me, Shannon? Because I'll be putting links in the chat when Casey's presenting. Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go and get started while we're figuring that out. Jump to the right spot.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. So this is the 1931 Charleston City Plan story map. I'm going to start with a little bit of background of how we got here. So in 2020, the city's Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation, the GIS division, the planning division, embarked on a collaborative effort to tell the story of racial inequities in the city and how we're addressing them. We presented a story map about that and 2 Open Data Days ago. So Casey can put a link to that story map in the chat if you're interested in that one. When we were creating this, like many other cities, we were seeking to understand how our city's historic actions and policies contributed to segregation and racial inequities that we're experiencing today. Redlining maps are a really common tool used by cities to help provide that understanding and to do research. but one redlining map was never created for the city of Charleston. So we were not participants in that national program. So we didn't have access to that. So I reached out to our public records manager to ask if she knew anything in our of anything in our archives that were comparable or that would provide us with some similar insight. And she directed me to an old collection of 10 maps on that they were hand-drawn on rolled linen paper that had been discovered when our department moved buildings several years prior. So those maps and the documents that they informed are the subject of this story map and of our presentation today. But this discovery of these historically significant planning maps created in 1931 led to the first, the city's record management division's first contribution to the Low Country Digital Library and to an innovative collaboration with the Charleston Library Society. These maps were produced in conjunction with the preparation of what we've been referring to as the Morris-Knowles Report. Formally, it is titled The City of Charleston's Report of the City Planning and Zoning Commission upon a Program for the Development of a City Plan with Specific Studies of Certain Features thereof. They were quite long-winded in their titles then. So we're going to keep calling it the Morris-Knowles Report for short. So this report paved the way for the city's first comprehensive zoning ordinance, which was also prepared by the same company, Morris-Knowles Incorporated. The city holds the maps in the zoning ordinance, while the Charleston Library Society has the only physical copy of that report. The Records Management Division, and everything was just in physical form at that time. So the Records Management Division uploaded the maps, zoning ordinance, to the Low Country Digital Library, and then Charleston Library Society digitized the report. And so this, the culmination of this was the reconnection of all of these documents into one digital collection that has been available online for the public for a little over a year now. And having these digitized also allowed city staff to create the resource that we're presenting to you today, which does a deep dive and does a lot of analysis into the maps. So this story map functions as an interpretive guide to the collection of the maps, the report, and the zoning ordinance. This data that we'll be sharing to you today can also be used by others for what we hope further research and education throughout the community. What you can expect from the presentation today is we'll be providing a tour of the story map, going through each of these sections that are linked at the top of the story map. We're going to highlight some key points and features that we feel are important, but this is really set up to be a self-guided resource. So, and there's a lot more content than we'll be able to cover in today's presentation. So we encourage those who are interested in listening along to spend some time with us on your own afterward to really get the full experience. And if folks have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat as we're going through, but we'll also have time at the end or be trying to make time at the end for questions and answers. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first section, which is rooting us in the historical context. So we wanted to root the viewer in the times in which the 1931 Morris-Knowles Report was created. Zoning and comprehensive planning were being established at the same time that Jim Crow segregation was being upheld and white supremacist violence was ongoing. We know about that history, or that's fairly commonly known across the country, but we often don't think about necessarily how that may have influenced physical aspects of our cities, policies at the local level that informed the environment that we live in and experience today. So this timeline starts the late 1800s, the end of the Civil War. The timeline highlights both national level things as well as local points in time that are significant to this history. And one thing that I want to highlight is that explicitly racial zoning was attempted in many cities, or multiple cities across the country in the early days of zoning. However, it was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 1917. This was prior to the city's first zoning ordinance. And that case that ruled it unconstitutional was Buchanan versus Warley. This doesn't mean that cities didn't still try to achieve the same result. They just couldn't use explicitly racial zoning as a tool. I also want to note that this timeline is not exhaustive, and it certainly leaves out plenty of other critical moments in history. We chose to select key points in time that illustrated that juxtaposition of the formation of planning and zoning and Charleston's, the nation's, both unique and universal history of post-slavery racism. So where the timeline ends is right before the Morris-Knowles report was created. And the city of Charleston set up a planning and zoning commission, the late 20s, I believe 1929. And we looked through city yearbooks. So these are yearbooks that were published every year, and they typically included a mayor's address at the beginning, which recounted all of the key achievements or actions from the year prior. And so this statement discusses the creation of the Zoning and City Planning Commission and why they were created. And it references motivations, including maintaining the original colonial atmosphere of the community, keeping the city attractive, eliminating fire hazards, unsanitary conditions, as well as a fight against unsightly and unsafe Negro tenement houses. And here I'm quoting directly from the text. It gives you a little bit of a glimpse of where the city was in terms of the decision to create a planning and zoning commission and contract with Morris-Knowles Incorporated to create this report. Something that I meant to say earlier and forgot, so I'll say now, is, and you probably already picked up on this, but this presentation, the contents of the story map, is difficult. It's difficult content to process, and so it's emotional, it's personal, and we will be referencing discriminatory language from historic documents. And so I just want to caution folks that this is, fairly sensitive content, and to take care of yourselves. And we do want to be clear that behind the data that we're presenting and the maps that we're presenting are real people and real lives and stories. And we feel that it's even more so important that we share this information. This next section in the story map is providing an overview of the documents that are further explored in the remaining story map. So we have, and this is going over the collection itself. So we have the report, which we've mentioned. The report is essentially the city's first comprehensive plan. This report is in the property of Charleston Library Society. And this report outlines demographic changes and recommendations, and it is explicitly this report does have explicitly racial language encouraging displacement of Black communities and segregation of parks and schools to encourage such displacement. And here's a quote that I won't read through now that showcases that intent. The next part of the collection are the maps that we discovered and that we've analyzed further in the story map. So there's 10 maps that were created for them as part of the creation of the Morris-Knowles report. And then there's the actual zone map that was adopted with the city's first zoning ordinance. These maps are not all in the report. And so we can only presume that many of them that aren't featured in the report were essentially working maps used in the analysis and discussion, but we can't know for sure. And then the last piece of the collection is the zoning ordinance itself. And so this was codified, this was adopted by city council, and this became our first zoning ordinance. This was law in the city of Charleston at that time. Due to the Supreme Court ruling, we do not find any explicit racial text in the zoning ordinance or the zone map. So the remaining story map, which Casey's gonna lead us through, takes you on a deep dive through the contents of this collection. You can also access all of them on the Low Country Digital Library, and we'll provide links in the chat, and there are links to each of these pieces of the collection in the story map as well.
All right, thank you, Chloe. I'm gonna share my screen now. And then did you full screen yours? There we go. Okay. All right, so this next section is called A Vision for Segregation. So I'm going to walk through some of the maps, really primarily two of the maps in the Morris Knowles collection, and the content of the map and how it pertains to the actual report. The full report, I think, is 70 something pages. And a lot of that is devoted to this one map, the general city plan, or kind of centered around this general city plan. But they make reference to some of the other maps throughout. And then the back half of the map is also in reference to the report, excuse me, is kind of around thoroughfares and road design. So about halfway through the report, it kind of takes a turn and gets into the technical aspects of how the road should be designed. But this general city plan map is really, it's got kind of the most information out of any of them. Well, before I begin, as Chloe mentioned, these were hand-drawn big maps on linen paper. They're big, and they were scanned in super high resolution to create these essentially really high resolution images. So anytime you're working with something like that, the first step is to georeference that map to get it on top of what a current map would look like. So you do that so that you can compare it to what it looks like today, but maybe more importantly, so that you can compare the different maps to each other. So you can take features from one map and see how they line up on another map. So the next step after georeferencing is digitizing the components of the map. And this is basically tracing a digital version of what you're seeing on the physical map. So in this general city plan map, this is zoomed in on the legend, and it's pretty good practice with these maps, or any maps for that matter, to take a look at the legend, see what's going to be on the map. So we've got the existing and proposed parks, the thoroughfares and streets, existing and proposed schools, and then white and African American residential districts, as well as a business district and industrial district. This is, let it load. So this is the general city plan with the digitized Black residential district or districts over it. And like I said before, the reason you digitize these is to compare them. So this is current City of Charleston neighborhoods. So you can see that the Black residential district was located the west side, the east side, east central, and then a little bit of Radcliffe Borough, and then this section along Calhoun Street right here. So this is the proposed industrial district. You can see it kind of hugs the Black residential district. And then this is the business district, and it's kind of scattered throughout, but then along what is currently the business district, And then everything else is the white residential district. So this the African American residential district being sort of in the middle of the industrial district does not appear to be an accident. There's a quote from the report. Such development generally will be advantageous and should be encouraged when and as necessary. And that's in reference to a Black residential district being in this area. So then I zoom in on this section along Calhoun Street. There's a lot of language about this area specifically. And so this isn't highlighted in a digital layer, it will be later, but right here, where it is currently is Buste, which was a school for African American children in 1931. And so in the report, they recommend that they convert this to a school for white children. A lot of the language in the report surrounding this area is about kind of displacing people from this area, but they use this term a lot, a more desirable type of residential development, and they use that term or some derivative of it a lot throughout the report, maybe 10 times. So in this area specifically, here's another quote for the area around Calhoun Street. It should be possible to maintain the white occupancy of this section and to bring about a desirable improvement in the present type of development. So, you know, like Chloe said, really racially explicit language in this report. And in fact, this area south of Calhoun Street was raised eventually in the 60s to make way for the Gaillard Auditorium, where I'm speaking to you now. This is another section that was targeted for redevelopment. Let the map load. So this is a different map. Like I said before, you know, when you georeference these maps, you can compare one to another. And this is the population in 1931. So the legend indicates that a hollow circle represents 10 white people and a filled in circle represents 10 Black people. And I do have the Black residential layer turned on here, but it's nowhere to be found in this area. And so you go back to the general city plan map and see that this was actually a proposed park. And then later in the report, when it's talking about parks, it says B2 to B9 inclusive. So B8 are neighborhood parks for white people. So they wanted to get rid of this section, displace these people, and build a park here. And specifically in reference to this park, they said, and I quote, "It is probable that a revenue could be derived from this property until the time arrives for its improvement as a park by operating it as an automobile parking lot." So that's in between turning it into a park and getting people out of it. So the report talks about schools quite a bit and kind of their utility in implementing segregation. And this is a quote from the report. So in the South, where schools are segregated, quote, "The logical location of schools may be an effective influence for the desirable development of the surrounding territory." So in this map, have got the digitized schools, existing schools and parks. And when you kind of dig into the report, you can see which schools were for who, because they were specific about that. So these are the 8 schools for white children. And these are the 4 schools for African American children. But again, they recommended that Buste be converted into a school for white children. And then in the light blue, these are proposed schools. So these 3 are for white children. And this is the Harris Street School. It's a proposed school for African American children. but that would be only after Buste was converted into a school for white children. And then, excuse me, in light green, we've got proposed parks. So this park running along the Ashley River, obviously that didn't come to fruition, but in reference to that, it is believed that the undeveloped section adjoining the Ashley River be reserved as a white residence sections by developers for the use of deed covenants. So this was along this section of proposed parks. And those are really the main features of the general city plan map. Excuse me. So next I want to get into the population maps that I referenced earlier. So like I said before, these hollow and filled in circles represent either 10 white people or 10 black people. And they tell us a lot about what was going on and what the authors of the report thought would be happening in the future. And then after the population maps from the report, we've taken census data from 2000, 2010, and 2020 and formatted it in the same way so that you can see how it compares to what was going on in 1931. And just to point out that the census data is going to show just majority white blocks and majority black blocks. Obviously, there's more diversity going on than that. And when you click on a block in the census level maps, you can see that the populations of other individuals. So this is the population in 1931. There were 150 majority black blocks, 21 about even, so that is anywhere from 48 to 52%, and almost 300 majority white blocks. But if you zoom in on the map, you can see that it is fairly diverse throughout the blocks. You know, the majority one race or the other, but there is a lot of integration on the ground level, so to speak. But I do want to point out, this is Calhoun Street here. And so the next map, as I understand, it wasn't part of the 10 large format linen maps. It was, I think it was found within the report, but it was called the 1931 Estimated Ultimate Distribution of Population. And so first of all, way fewer about even blocks, and really a concentration of the majority black blocks, and a large increase in the amount of majority white blocks. But then when you zoom in and look at it, there's not nearly the level of integration, you know, within each blocks. And also almost all of the majority black blocks south of Calhoun Street are missing from this map. So if you compare the two, you can see it really is kind of corralling African Americans into this area here. And that's in line with the proposed black residential areas from the general city plan. They almost perfectly line up. So then this is 2000 population. And there's a pretty distinct racial divide here. This is Spring Street. But as I said before, if you click on a block, you can see that there's more than just black and white in the data. It's just it's symbolized this way to compare it to the older maps. So yeah, 2000. This is 2010. So this line is kind of creeping up. And for this section specifically, this is referenced in the report. Between Spring and Line Street, the owners of property on the east side of the proposed thoroughfare probably should provide covenants and deeds which will reserve the property as a residential section for white persons. So that didn't happen through deeds, it happened through housing costs and gentrification, but it's happened nonetheless. And then this is the 2020 population distribution. So the African American majority blocks are really diminished in this map. The few remaining are the north central area, east central area, some on the east side, and then Gadsden Green and Robert Mills Manor communities. So dramatic decrease. And if you remember from the estimated future population, there were estimating 400 majority white blocks, and that came true almost exactly, but not nearly the amount of majority black blocks persisted over the years. So next we're going to get into a section's called environmental racism, but we want to look at kind of environmental hazards and how they compare to the original proposed African American residential sections. So most of this data came from the EPA Environmental Justice Screening Tool, and just a note on that. It is a risk indices. So basically, an area's vulnerability to a type of environmental risk, and then their susceptibility to it combined into an index. And you can learn more about that at the link provided. And then a quick note on percentiles. I had to do a little bit of a statistics refresher for this, but percentile means you're higher than the percentage of the rest of the people, in this case, the country. So this is air toxics cancer risk. Is the risk of cancer is higher than that of 95% of the rest of the country. That doesn't mean 95% more likely to get cancer, just to clarify that. But the following maps have the general city plan on the left, and then these various indices on the right. And in many cases, the pattern is that these formerly Black residential areas are at a higher risk of these environmental hazards. Air toxics respiratory hazard is kind of a combination of all sorts of air toxics. Traffic proximity. So these areas that are at high traffic proximity, the crosstown cuts right through here, and then I-26 is up here in this area. So it's not much of a surprise there. But if you'd like to learn more about traffic proximity and urban displacement, we have a urban displacement story map. So if it's facilities with risk management plans, these are facilities that handle hazardous materials, or extremely hazardous materials. And then Superfund sites that have known hazardous substances in the ground. So then health outcomes. So maybe or potentially as a function of these hazards, this map is a little bit of a different pattern that is a higher percentile south of Broad. Asthma prevalence, really along this kind of middle strip of the peninsula. And then this map was really striking. This is life expectancy, and that it could be living in one of these red areas means you could have anywhere from 4 to 24 year shorter life expectancy than living in one of the even lighter blue areas. So I thought that was really striking. And this comes from the Center for Disease Control. And then climate vulnerability. So this is just, it's an interactive map, climate vulnerability index, but you can see it's really the same areas that are highlighted in the previous maps. And so, yeah, these formerly African-American residential districts are greater exposure to and vulnerability to these environmental hazards and climate issues that often comes with worse health outcomes and shorter life expectancy. So. And I'll kick it back to you, Chloe. Oh, I gotta stop sharing.
It's all right. I kicked you off. Okay. Okay, so now what do we do with this information? So we started in the story map with the historical context in which this report and these plans were created. We saw in the presentation that Casey gave on how the populations changed over time and the environmental and health impacts of these plans and of segregation. So we saw the legacy of those. And so to close out the story map, we really thought it was important to highlight some of the actual tools that were used to facilitate these outcomes. And unlike the plan, these documents that are created in the past and live in the past, these tools aren't just in the past. Some of them are still in practice today. Some of them still exist today. And as we go through some of these examples, it's important to understand that though we are highlighting a zoning ordinance in this, a report that very much informed our zoning ordinance, zoning alone did not create these impacts. One, it wasn't officially allowed to, and also zoning can only control so much. However, in concert with other policies and systems in the private market, zoning certainly did play a role in creating certain conditions that led to disparate outcomes. So one of the things that I'll highlight that played a significant role that zoning certainly did work in concert with was the Federal Housing Administration and its underwriting manual. And I'll give credit to, this is one of the contributions that Jim Hemphill really made to this research, was digging into this and helping us understand how this connected to these other documents. So following the Great Depression, Federal Housing Administration and federally backed mortgages for the first time, this was a huge boost for home buyers, a huge boost for home ownership generally. However, it mostly benefited white households, and they created a manual which instructed underwriters on how to determine who got mortgage insurance and who didn't. And in that manual, they were outlining ways that, as neighborhoods were being constructed, ways that they might be considered more favorable. So guidelines that, if somebody wanted to buy a home there, they wanted to get insurance, how do you build your neighborhood and where do you build it so that you're more likely to actually get somebody to buy it? Many of those ways that highlighted in the manual emphasize the importance of segregation of the races. So I'm going to highlight a few tools that the Federal Housing Administration recommended home builders to use to gain a more favorable rating. One of those is density controls. And this is where I'll say that, probably the primary way that zoning interacted with these other systems to promote segregation. So density controls could be single family zoning, setting higher minimum lot sizes, and setting lower density maximums. So the Federal Housing Administration saw density controls as a effective way of separating not only the races, but also social classes based on income by limiting availability of more affordable homes. So the way that this section kind of walks the reader through this is on the left, we see the plain language version. We basically summarized what the manual is stating, and then on the right is an image from the actual manual. And Casey, I believe, has provided a link to the only full manual I could find access to online. It was the 1938 edition, but it was first published in 1936. So we have a combination of quotes from both editions. The second tool is restrictive covenants and HOAs. So they recognize that, zoning could only go so far, and a more effective tool to be more explicit about who, by their race, could live in a certain neighborhood. We're having homeowner associations that enforced restrictive covenants. And they presented this as a legal option for promoting segregation and upholding it. A third tool that they recommended was the use of physical barriers, whether they be natural or artificial. High-speed traffic arteries were cited in the text as being an example of a physical barrier. And they saw them as being very effective at preventing, quote unquote, so quote, infiltration of business and industrial uses, lower class occupancy, and inharmonious racial groups, close quote. Okay, my right one. And then the last tool last recommendation that they made for home builders to gain a more favorable rating was essentially school segregation. So they outlined how basically integrated schools were going to generate a less favorable rating, and to aim to locate new neighborhoods where there was clear segregation in the schools, where they did not specify white children, but essentially white children could go to a school with other white children. And even if they had to use a fee-based option, that could potentially gain a more favorable rating if there was not a school, a public school nearby for them. So now what? We've put this resource together to expose, to shine a light on this history. So we know how we got here, but we ultimately want this information to help us reflect on where we go next as a city, where we go now. So I'll go back to the quote that was highlighted at the beginning of the story map, quote by Austin Channing Brown. Our history is so informative for both how we got here and who we'll choose to be next. So we hope this information will help us as a community choose to be a more inclusive and equitable city in the future, now and in the future. So we have two immediate opportunities where we can start to chart that path. So one is we're in the middle of rewriting our zoning ordinance. This is the first complete rewrite since 1931. So I will say, though, in 1966, we did a comprehensive update, but we have not done a full rewrite of our zoning ordinance since 1931. We are also creating a new 10 to 20 year plan for the Charleston Peninsula. So something to note about this 1931 plan and zoning ordinance was at that time, the city was only was confined to just the peninsula. It had not annexed outside of the peninsula at that time. So it was not only was it our first comprehensive plan, it was also our first peninsula plan. So we are creating a new plan for the peninsula. We are rewriting our zoning ordinance. So these are two immediate opportunities for us to make better, more inclusive plans and policies to implement those plans. There are numerous other efforts, and as a city in our comprehensive plan in 2021, we adopted a resilience and equity framework to apply to these initiatives and also others to take inequalities very seriously into consideration, to meaningfully engage the community members that have been directly harmed by those inequalities, and to craft strategies that can begin to untangle the wrongs of our past. So we urge folks to stay involved, share this information, get involved, and the best way to stay up to date about the efforts that I just mentioned, being the Peninsula Plan, the zoning ordinance, and others, is to subscribe to the City of Charleston newsletter. That is where we publish information about opportunities for community engagement. And then lastly, there's a map viewer that has everything in here that you can explore sort of on your own without the interpretation. So Casey's going to do a quick demo of that, and then we'll break for questions.
All right, thank you, Chloe. I'll keep this brief because I know we're running out of time.
Casey, I don't know if it's just on my end, but your audio got really quiet.
How about that? Yeah, I pulled my mic down.
Better.
Okay. All right, so can you guys see this? So we're gonna assume you can. So this is the map viewer. Like Chloe said, it contains all of the layers and some additional layers that came from the maps, digitized versions of the maps. It also contains all of the maps geo-referenced over a current map so that you can see where things are now and how they related to the maps before. So it starts with a disclaimer because we frankly don't want anybody finding this and seeing, these really disturbing language from the old maps without some kind of context. But when you turn this on, it defaults to this, and there's some information about each of the sections. So this layers list, they're broken out into sections. These are all of the Morris-Knowles maps. These are all of the population layers, symbolized as they were in the story map. And then these are all of the digitized layers. And then we've got modern streets and peninsula neighborhoods on as well. So you zoom in and out just like you would on any map. I'm going to turn off these digitized layers briefly. So this is defaulted to the general city plan map, but we can look at the official zoning map. And so these, as I said before, these are really high resolution, so they take a second to load sometimes because they're really big. But these are all the actual adopted by law zones. And that doesn't, the zoning ordinance didn't contain any racial language, but it would have been influenced by the report. So then if you turn on this zone map districts, digitize, oh wait, got to turn on. That's a good example though. These are all in a group so that if the group is not on, you will not see what you're trying to see. So these are the official zones. Some other maps, this existing uses of properties, I think is an interesting map. Give this one a second. This one's complicated. And this one is a work in progress for the digitization. It's got a lot going on. So hopefully we'll get this digitized. Well, this one doesn't want to load. I got it to work yesterday, so I know it is operational, but it's still thinking. Yes, here we go. So yeah, this was all hand drawn and hand colored in. And like I said before, you should always look at the legend first. So these are property uses. I digitized the garages just because I thought that was interesting. or garages, service stations and gas stations. So this is gasoline service stations, as they were called. And I thought it was interesting just how many there were back in 1931. I think there's like maybe 4 on the peninsula now. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Yeah, you can get all of the data that we've digitized from these maps, in addition to the maps themselves, and explore this on your own. And I'm going to stop sharing.
And that's all we have. So if folks have questions,
Chloe, I don't know if you can
Oh.
see can you see the Q&A as
I
co-host?
can, yes. And
Great.
it's not a question, but are folks able to come off mute?
They should be. Let me try to set that up real quick.
So I was gonna
I'll allow everyone should be able to talk now. But Chloe, maybe if you don't mind reading the comment.
yeah, I was gonna see if Donna wanted to say it out loud, but it says, thank you for the team's persistence and a deep dive on the subject, critical for institutional knowledge as well as the impact of previous planning processes on our city. We need to understand so we can equitably, plan equitably for the future. And that came from Donna. Donna Jacobs, one of our planning commissioners.
Any other questions for our wonderful presenters? Really beautiful, comprehensive work, very heavy stuff to cover, but fantastic job, you guys.
Thank you. All right.
All right, I'm gonna put a link to it one more time in the chat, just, so we put a bunch in there, so in case folks wanna go ahead and pull this up on their screens, but yeah, thank you so much, for listening.
Great, thank you guys so much. Robert, do you want to close this out this afternoon? And then I will quickly put up on the screen again the participant survey if people have a minute to take it. And I also just want to mention for the presenters, for our tireless GIS staff who have been on here all day, we've had over 100 views on the first half of today on the YouTube, so very impressed by that. But yeah, Robert, if you don't mind closing us out.
Yeah, great. I really didn't have anything to add other than to thank everybody that spent the time to prepare presentations today. Very proud of all the work everybody's done. Thank everybody that is attended and has participated. So thanks everybody, and have a good weekend. And yeah, a reminder that this is on the YouTube channel, and sometime early next week we'll provide links to where you can jump to the different presentations within the YouTube presentation. So if there was something you wanted to share with somebody, it'll be there for you to share. So thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.